All right, thank you, Dory. Yep, I see it recording. All right, thank you, everyone. Good morning. My name is David Thomas. I'm here at ICPSR. I'm a project manager here, and I'm the project manager for the NADAC archive. What we're going to cover today, what you're here for, is quantifying the arts and creativity, exploring the National Endowment for the Arts Data Archive. So, you chose to be here, we chose to be here, let's get going. All right, so just so you know what's about to happen. All right, what you're going to get out of this webinar is we're going to introduce you or reintroduce you to the NADAC mission and purpose. You're going to learn what NADAC has to offer as far as data visualizations, data itself, data themselves, and the various resources we have. And we're going to give you a little update on the NADAC future, the future of NADAC. One thing that we're really excited about, among many things, is the ability to tell you all that work that's about to happen here, as far as like the agenda. So this is the introduction, obviously, and then you can see what's going to happen, right? What is NADAC, the resources, next steps forward, questions, all that stuff. It seems redundant, but I just want to make sure everyone knows what's about to happen. Now, this is something that doesn't always happen. I think it actually rarely happens for ICPSR and one of our webinars, particularly during Love Your Data Week, right? We have with us a special guest, our project officer, Sunil from the NEA. He's going to talk to us a bit. So the greatness of having Sunil with us is that he's been with us, been on this project for a long time. It is sort of, you know, he's going to bring to you like the thinking behind it and everything like that. There are going to be some issues as far as I'm going to switch out to his slides, and then I'm going to follow along with him as you follow along with him so we can get started. So give me a minute to go to the other slide presentation, you know, technology. So Sunil, I'm going to key you up.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. So I guess one thing I should just say at the outset is that when we say NADAC, we're referring to the National Archive of Data on Arts and Culture. And we're very proud to have this relationship with ICPSR at the University of Michigan to make these data available to the public. So you may not know, but the National Endowment for the Arts has a research office devoted to building and promoting evidence about the value and impact of the arts for individuals and for communities. And I'll be talking a little bit today about how we try to incentivize researchers to use what we believe is a wealth of data that we generate, but that our partners generate for use in arts and cultural research. So next slide, please. Thank you. And so we are a relatively small independent agency who's devoted to promoting, as I said, the research office is devoted to promoting evidence about the value and impact of the arts, but the Arts Endowment as a whole funds arts projects all around the country in communities large and small, urban and rural, reaching particularly underserved communities with the arts. And one of the things that we try to do though in the research arm is because we are relatively small, we work with much larger federal statistical agencies to understand how the arts affect society and really the role of the arts in various sectors and areas of human endeavor. And to do that, I'm just calling out three partners we have. The Bureau of Economic Analysis at the U.S. Department of Commerce, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, who provides some rich data sets that we use to analyze data on artists, and the U.S. Census Bureau, with whom we've had a relationship pretty much since the early 1980s. These are just a couple of reports stemming from data that are available on the NADAC website, the repository, but I'll just touch on some of the points within these data. Next slide, please. So first of all, as a kind of advertisement to, you know, why do we seek to promote knowledge about the arts? Just to talk about one dimension alone about creativity in the arts, the economic factor. We're hopeful that economists or statisticians or business students who might be listening or participating in this webinar will see the value of looking at some of the data, some of the holdings we have at NADAC to understand such factors as this. For example, we know that arts and culture contributes more than 800 billion to the total U.S. economy, and we do this with the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, so we're able to analyze that in terms of trends. There's been a continuous growth rate with arts as a proportion of GDP. It's now close to 4.3%. We'll actually be releasing new numbers on this and be sharing the data on NADAC too in about a month or so. There are about 5 million workers who are employed by arts and cultural industries. These are wage and salary workers. And one sort of tantalizing fact is that the arts contribute to a growing trade surplus. That is, we continually export more in arts and cultural commodities than we import, to the tune of about $25 billion differential there. And that, of course, runs counter to the trends with our nation's sort of trade as a whole. So that's worth noting. Next slide, please. Another dimension we look at when we talk about arts and cultural assets in this country is we look at the workforce. And here we've tended to rely on two statistical data sources. Again, these data are available on NADAC. One is the American Community Survey, which many of you are probably familiar with, which is an annual rolling survey of actually workforce patterns and actually demographic characteristics and other factors, but also it has for us a lot of rich data, particularly geographic data on artists and arts workers. And the Current Population Survey, which is a survey we've had a long-standing relationship with. This is the survey the Bureau of Labor Statistics uses through the Census Bureau to understand employment around the country, but we actually use it to derive information about workers, arts workers, and also for that matter, arts participation. Next page, please. So a report we've released fairly recently, Artists and Other Cultural Workers, actually expands or opens the aperture a bit as to what we are counting when we talk about workers in arts and culture. We have for many years tracked artists of various types, but this is now looking at multiple data sets, not just those two mentioned, to understand not only artists, but these categories we'll call non-artist cultural workers. Next slide, please. And so just to give you a sense, and again, these data are on NADAC, but we've tracked for, I think, gosh, going back to the 70s, about 11 distinct artist occupations that you can find in the Census Bureau, particularly through the, for the Current Population Survey, but also recently in the American Community Survey. And if you go to the next slide, please. What we are now doing, as I said, is expanding this to include a variety of other, for the first time, I should say, different kinds of workers who now we align with how we talk about arts and culture in this country. This, of course, also aligns with some of the information I shared up front about how we view arts and cultural industries. So while these are occupations that often are employed in industries that contribute to the creative economy, and these occupations themselves are often employ creative or cultural aspects in terms of the definition of the work they perform. So here's just a quick snapshot of that. Next slide, please. And just to summarize this, and there's much, much more on the on NADAC and of course on the Arts Endowment website at arts.gov, but just three high-level findings or ways to think about counting arts workers in this country coming from different data sources. If you talk about the 5 million I just told you about who are employed by, these are wage and salary workers employed by arts and cultural industries, you'll realize there's also 2.5 million artists, some of whom are employed in those industries, but a lot of them are self-employed. In fact, artists tend to be, I think, at a rate of 3.5 times the regular workforce to be self-employed. They're highly entrepreneurial. And we also know that about 1.2 million non-artists who fall into those other categories I just mentioned, who may be self-employed or wage and salary workers too. So there are a lot of numbers floating around. I'll let you dabble further with the data. Next slide. Another big, so I've talked about the arts and cultural economy briefly, and also artist workers as it relates to NADAC. And the third and last thing I would just mention here is we do a lot of research, and this is the research going back to the early 80s, on arts and cultural participation in this country. So some high-level findings from the report we released not too long ago. We realized that 40%, more than 40% of adults attended a performing arts experience, dance, music, theater, etc., while about 42% or so attended visual arts exhibits. And what's great about this is we have trend data. So we now know that actually there was an increase in the share who attended these events. Now this is actually the year of the survey here is 2017. These are data derived from our survey of public participation in the arts, which is a supplement of the current population survey, which I just mentioned. We also have statistics about movies. And I should mention here, we also have statistics about sports, attendance, exercising, things like gardening, leisure and recreational activities, including here going to the movies as well. Next slide. So our latest and greatest reports, I believe last month, we put on our website a full comprehensive report of the 2017 Survey of Public Participation in the Arts, which we're happy to share. So it has a lot of rich tables and data. And more importantly, again, the data are available at NADAC. I can't say this enough. And they are highly used I'm very pleased to see that NADAC has become a go-to place for these data. But we also made available our state-by-state data. So we did some analyses and tables that we provided, again, on the NADAC site, looking at every state. And so if you go to arts.gov and go to the research tab and scroll down to something called Arts Data Profiles, you will see we provide interactive maps and other resources to look at arts participation rates in a given state. Next. So I would just hope you would all see fit to go free-ranging on these data. We really want to make sure that, and I think maybe David will refer to this, a big goal for NADAC is to make sure that as many disciplines across as many different academic communities as possible engage with these data so that they are not sort of sequestered among only a few who maybe care for cultural economics, although that's great. We want people to realize that because the arts themselves are integral to human endeavor, into expression, into behaviors, we would hope that the research is similarly diverse and integrated in other disciplines. So one of the ways we try to incentivize this is through research grants. And so just to take a look at this, we have a deadline rapidly approaching in March. But right now, if you go to the arts.gov website and go to research, you'll learn about the research grants opportunities we have. And they all have a cost share requirement of about 1-to-1 match. And then grants can go up to $100,000. Next slide, please. So I did mention that we cut across various disciplines, and this isn't a sort of empirically produced word cloud. It's actually may have been empirically produced a while ago, so it's a little outdated. But essentially, these are some of the disciplines that are engaged with our work, and not necessarily in order of magnitude. We have many, many more coming on board that are probably not represented here. Next slide. So I'm not going to go over each of these, but to give you a snapshot, we do have several grants that actually seek just to mine data and to produce reports from looking at arts variables in relation typically to other variables within large data sets. So here are some of them. The first one mentions the General Social Survey. That's another one that gets a lot of use on NADAC because we have arts and cultural modules that we've created that are part of that survey. Next slide, please. Again, some more data that you can see, most of which are available through NADAC. Next slide. And the list goes on. I won't belabor this. So we'll just end with by saying that in addition to research grants, I wanted to plug another opportunity if some of you are interested down the road. Today we'll be announcing the most recent round of what are called NEA Research Labs, which are transdisciplinary centers we fund at various colleges and universities to explore the arts in relation to some broad categories related to, for example, health and well-being, creativity, cognition and learning, and entrepreneurship and innovation. Can you go to the next slide, please? And here's just that opportunity, which again has a March deadline. If you're interested, you can explore what some of the labs have been up to. I would just like to call out Indiana University at Purdue University, Indianapolis, that is doing some great data mining work, for example. And one of the center's labs, I believe, will be announcing today, is doing some great epidemiological-based work on arts and health data sets. So with that, I'll turn it back to David. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sunil. Now, bear with me. All right. I think this is going well. So, as Sunil mentioned, that we are at ICPSR, and you know I'm at ICPSR, and the funding. One thing I wanted to point out is that users obtain data from NADAC at no charge, so anyone can get into this and explore the data, explore the repository, all of that. That's another really important part of being externally funded. And Sunil kind of alluded to, also to going beyond just the people who, like, what did you say? Economic arts research, right? So, you know, any location, different types of users, different levels of users. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're trying to appeal to. Those are our populations. So it's multiple populations that we want coming to this site to use these data and to explore the site, to look at the resources. I think, you know, this is just part of covering all of our bases, but this is facilitating research on the arts and culture by acquiring these data and sharing these data, again, so that as many people as possible, all the different aspects, all the different ways people might be involved or interested, our goal is to provide those options, to provide that space, to be that space to do that. Now let's get into some of our resources, right? So one thing in particular about the NADAC site, and I'm relatively new to the project, is an emphasis on data visualizations so that people can access data and get an experience of data beyond just the numbers. You know, so you can use the data, you can see a story without knowing all the equations, without proving again, like long-held math theories and stuff like that. We want those different users, we want all those different users to come into this, right? And so, you know, another thing we have is that we have a list of holdings. This is actually, since I started these slides, I think we've added one more, so now the holdings are up to 132. So we have microdata, and when we say microdata, what we're talking about are data where someone can come into these data and they might do, you know, full-fledged analysis, and I'll get into different ways they might be able to do that, but also tabular data and other data, which we'll call union catalog entries, where the data might not be held on this site, but we have links so that you can get to these data from this site. Again, we want to be a place where people come to find data on the arts, and that sometimes means going beyond just what we have. You also see that as we're developing new things as far as publications as well. As Sunil was mentioning, you know, government-based data, so federally funded sites, ACS, CPS, those types of data, those can be found here. Particularly the Arts Basic Surveys across the years, which formerly were the annual Arts Basic Surveys. Other data would be the Heritage Health Information Survey, which is another survey just about different types of organizations that might be involved in library science, but also cataloging and museums, stuff like that. Here's an example of one of our data visualizations. Again, referring back to that survey of public participation in the arts. So you see that, you know, this tells a story. You can see what's going on. You can see, you know, attending live performing arts events. You can see visual arts events, as Sunil was mentioning earlier. This kind of nicely worked out. And so, again, you don't have to come into this having all the skill sets or thinking about, well, what kind of question I want to have. You can use this as exploratory and pull information from this as you need and kind of make it so that, you know, you get what you need and you don't have to have a lot of investment in the startup, in your own, you know, knowledge set, anything like that. So it really looks to kind of democratize to a certain degree the data sets, the data access, all of that. Now, going into the data types. All right, so we are at ICPSR, and ICPSR is known for having statistical packages and different things so people can analyze data, right? So when I say statistical packages, I'm talking about the SAS, the SPSS, Stata, R, stuff like that. But we also have tab delimited files. And that again looks to make it so that people who don't have those proprietary packages can still work on these data. So that would be using tab delimited files. You can import them into Excel. You can use them in Google Sheets. And also we provide something called ASCII files, which is what some of us would call raw data, right? And those are for those people who really want to get into it. And that's a smaller and smaller population, but we still provide those. So again, looking at what you're getting is we're trying to appeal to all the different levels and types of users so that everyone's included and they can do that. I can't stress enough that this is freely available, right? So it's already funded. Just come in, look for the data you need, contact us, find the data, work with the data. This is the kind of thing we're talking about so that more and more people use these data. We want people into this site, into the repository, looking for things, giving us information, giving us feedback, working with us to build this and to make this the best we can. Another important aspect of NADAC is that these data will have online analysis capabilities. Many of these data sets already do. There are some that are out there that we're still working on. And as we bring in and curate and put out new data, that will happen as well. That means, though, that you don't require a statistical package on your own machine. You don't have to download the data. But without all that, analysis is still possible. You can still go into it and do things like what we'll call crosstabs. Many people might call tables, you know, and that's what you might see in different places. So you see like, you know, marital status by interest, or, you know, race by, you know, let's say like music interest or something like that. And you can see those things and get a picture and get an idea, again, without having to have the huge investment. Another thing that's a really great resource, all right, are the publications connected to the research, right? So the data, the research, all those things. This is another way to explore the catalog, to explore the repository, to figure out what's already been done, to find articles of interest, to find publications of interest, to find things, and then go from that place. So not only a place to find data, but to find how data are being interpreted, how they're being used, what's going on, and getting a feel for that. So again, to like hit all the different ways that people are experiencing data and people can have an experience with data. And you know, that's a major resource. And as a side note, and in addition, we are moving even beyond this to try to pull in other ways of other publications. And so that, again, we can go beyond just the data we have to be a true resource to as many people in as many ways as possible. This is just a screenshot of kind of what our front page looks like and what one of the, you know, what you might find when you come to this page. So that's what I was mentioning. Now you see 132 studies, all the publications, the different variables. Now you see a little data visualization on the side to pull you in. It draws you in. If I'm not mistaken, that's the Eiffel Tower in the back. You know, so again, this site looks to be a part of the community and to show you that we are serious about arts and arts data. In a little bit, I'm going to take you out to the site. So we're going to go away from this PowerPoint onto the website. But I just want to show you what it looks like right here to go into a little further into the site and look for data. You'll see right here that you have a search for data sets. And you have guides and stuff like that. You have hints about searching effectively. You have an explanation of a data set versus a study. So all these things so that you know what you're getting into. This is just, I'm going to go into the live demo, but I added this slide because you never know with a live technology thing what could happen. And since the slides will be available later, I wanted people to get a feel for what's going to happen. So now what you're going to see is me go out to the website. And here we go. Now, once again, you see another visualization. You see data. You see publications. I'm slowing down so that you can see what I'm doing. You can see depositing and sharing data. You can see how we've already set aside things like NADAC for researchers, for policymakers, for the public. All those things, that's what we want to do so that people can get to us and have the experience that we want them to have. In the interest of time, you can see, you can choose all the data, but I'm going to go particularly for arts participation, right? So now what you're watching me do is a little search here. And since I already know what I want, I'm going to go down to my fourth option, survey for participation, public participation in the arts, 82 to 2008. Right? And you're going to get this experience right here. You're seeing the whole thing about, you know, the description and everything. So you see the subject terms, how we got there. You can see the scope of the project. You can see methodology, you know, all this information you might need and the sources of data. One thing we're also going to do though is this piece here. You can see the listing of variables that are included and you can see the publications that are relevant when you click on this tab here. Right? And so you see that right here. And there's a place where if you know of a new citation, you can add it. One thing we're going to go out to is we're going to go out to here and just do some exploration. And when I say that, I'm just going to go back to make sure you saw it. So what I did was I clicked on Analyze Online, and then I had these different options. And then I just chose one. And it has terms of use like everything else, but still it's free. You just have to agree to the terms of use. And then in my case, I'm interested in marital status. So I'm going to click that. And then I'm also interested in jazz. All right. And so if I run that, I'm going to get a table. I'm going to get another table. And that's one way to experience the data. But let's say I want to see them, how they interact. So I'm going to pick marital status, throw it over here into the columns. And then I'm going to click jazz. There's a slight delay. I'm going to say run. Now, what you're going to see here is another experience of the data. One thing I noticed when I did this on various different types of sites is what you'll see are a few things. All right. Now, one thing to note is that most of our respondents seem to be in this married spouse present category. Okay, kind of makes sense for the US, right? And then that's, of those people, 7.8 for about 8% have been to a live jazz performance in the last 12 months. It's about the year, right? But, so the most people we're going to see, the biggest number is going to skew this. But if you look through it, one thing I kind of noticed though, is that, so for overall, since you have mostly married people, that's going to be your biggest numbers if you just look at numbers. But if you look at percentages, you'll notice that the divorced and never married people are the greatest percentage of their groups who are going to jazz. I don't know what that says about jazz. I don't know what that says about the population. It probably says nothing. Could just be like a finding or whatever, spurious correlation, something like that. But it's just something that I noted, and things that, like, you know, the average person can look into and kind of go, huh, give you something to think about, give you something to talk about, you know, with your friends and family. Maybe you want to, like, you know, think like, oh, I want to go to more jazz, something like that. But just another way to explore the data. That didn't take me very long. If you wanted to see a visualization on the fly, you could choose right here, run it again. Right? And you'll see this again. This is what that looks like, again, in the context of the larger data. So that's the same sort of thing of kind of looking at that and going, oh, okay, well, wow. And you can do those sorts of things. You have options in how to present the data. You wouldn't use as many of these options for a cross tabulation where you're using two variables like that. But still, you know, these are the different ways you can interact with the data, explore these data, explore the site, do all the different things, and, you know, have a good experience. I'm going back to where we were. And then I wanted to show you something, because I ran this again with a slightly different data set. And I'm seeing the same kind of findings, right? So looking at this, you see again, you know, you see relatively high percentages for divorce and never married seeing jazz, right? And then you're comparing that and you see this against, you know, as the bar graph. But then, for no good reason, but I just thought it was interesting, I decided to do it against age. So jazz and age. And what you're seeing, even though it's a bar chart, right, is you're also kind of seeing like a trend. And Sunil mentioned this, looking at trends. He wasn't talking about it in this scenario necessarily, but just an interesting sort of thing. Like, so the red here is the yes, you've seen a jazz, right? And look at it. I don't know if you can, how well you can see this, but hopefully, you know, from your end, you can see that color difference, right? And this is another thing where you're kind of like, oh, because you might think, you know, that jazz is hits a particular demographic or a particular type of person as far as age. But what we're seeing, if you're into jazz, is something that, you know, going from 18 all the way up to 96, right? You see, and this is the start at 18, all the way into like about 50 or 60s, right? You see a good number of people, you know, are still attending jazz performances. And if you hear the excitement in my voice, it's because I like jazz, and you're kind of like, oh, wow, jazz is still going and people are still seeing it. And that's exciting. And that's the kind of thing you can get from this site, right? To look at the arts and to be involved in a way that's maybe not how you thought you might be involved, but to see this in a different way and, you know, still have your passion for the arts and seeing it through social science data. And that's the exciting part about what this collaboration and what this effort is to get people to interact with the arts and data on the arts and creativity in the US population as it is right now, really, and see all these different ways, as Sunil was mentioning, the occupations like architects and artists and ushers and all these different ways people are interacting with the arts. And just so we know that this is still such a valuable piece of what, you know, our culture is and what our country is and all of that and what we're trying to do. Now, you know, I got a little carried away, got super excited about that because we are excited about this. This is a great project. This is what we're trying to do. Some of the next steps for what we're trying to do is right now we're still in the more traditional data. right? We're trying to move beyond that. You know, getting into maybe video and stuff like that, archiving that, so that we have different ways. Again, the idea being multiple ways of interacting with data on the arts and research on the arts and the arts. Another thing we're looking for is we're in the process of figuring out different ways to have more user feedback, audience participation, to get people involved and to get feedback and to, you know, figure out ways to still, you know, make this better and to move beyond what we've done before, to keep the strength of that and still keep growing and expanding and be great and provide the services that people want. Also, it's expanding beyond the United States for data, using international data and doing things like that, so that, again, we can be a great resource for that, for the arts data on the arts. Just wanted to point out a few more things. And then we can get to like some questions or commentary because we still have some time, which is wonderful. The project director is Susan Leonard here at ICPSR. And then I'm the project manager, and this is my email address. This is the site address. But also, when we're done in about a day or two, this webinar won't run a day or two, but I'm saying when we're done with this webinar today, and then in a day or two, this will be up on the ICPSR YouTube channel. So you can go back to it, you can get the slides, you can tell your friends about it, you can look it up again to go like, oh, what does Sunil say about this? Oh, that's right. And you can go to that channel and figure that out. So that ends my part. Sunil, did you want to add anything? Did you want to, let's look for questions?
Yeah, let's go for questions. Thank you, David. Just two things I would just quickly add. One is we're always looking for new data sets. So as you come across them in your own research, or maybe whether you're creating them or have access to them elsewhere, please do let us know. We try to provide micro data sets, but we also provide what's called a union catalog, listings of other data sets with descriptions. And we're looking basically for ideally, obviously robust data sets that have arts and cultural variables. Now that's a very broad category, and if people have questions, we can talk a little bit about that, but just we're on the lookout for new data sets. So you can contact the ICPSR NADAC team for that. And if you have any questions of us at the Arts Endowment, please contact research@arts.gov. Thank you.
All right, great. We'll wait for people to kind of come in. So some of the things that come up with people when they're asking questions about data in general and what's going on, let's get into that a little bit. So Sunil mentioned how we're always looking for data, right? And right from our site, you can go to, like if you noticed, that was on the front page. And there's the deposit button right here. And I clicked on that, and this is all it takes. Then you click the start deposit, and that's how you get started to, give us data, let us know about data, stuff like that. Another question people tend to have sometimes is contacting us, right? So you can also go through this email, send it right here. You get that, so that's our contact us as well. Okay, we have one question. Bear with me, everyone. I'm trying to read it.
One question. It's okay, we can end early.
Well, yeah, but is there a way to download reports, data crosstabs, or infographics in a PDF format as a way for people in the arts to show to their stakeholders? Well, let's explore that a little bit. Some of the infographics, let me make sure everyone can see this. All right, some of the infographics, you can open the image in a new window. It's a little button right down here. All right, this may not be what you choose to do, but you could make your own graph, whatever. And then you get this. This is just an example. And then you could copy the image or save the image or something like that copy the image address and put it in there. Another thing you might do if you like the table is it's as simple as pulling it out and like copying and pasting. You could do that. Also, it sees your data source that way. Some other ways you could interact is you might choose a different way to go about this. And kind of pull it through that way. I'm kind of starting a little bit further back. And this is a different way to create the same thing. And you might decide that this works better for you and do it this way. Bear with me, everyone, doing everything on the fly. And this might be another thing you pull out, something like that. So you could do it that way as well, depending on what you want to do. That's how you might go about that. Thank you for that question. All right. Anything else? All right, I'm not seeing any other questions. We have the ability to see how many people like stayed with us, and so we want to thank everyone who stayed with us. This has been really exciting. Like I said, you're going to be able to see this on YouTube and to get the experience then. And please, we hope that you tell your friends, you tell your colleagues, you tell everyone to come to our site. Please look for us on like this on social media, through ICPSR, through the NEA, all those things. Come back to the site. We're bringing out new data visualizations. We're releasing new data. So yeah. Sunil, would you like to close with any remarks or anything else?
No, I think that's it, David. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for attending this webinar. We'll also be putting this webinar, a link to it, I think we'll get from ICPSR that we can direct people to from our website so that others can experience this, and if you want to go back to it, you can. Again, our mission is to get the data out there in wide circulation, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so ends the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Continue on to see other Love Your Data Week stuff.
Bye.